Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today talking about stalagmite records from northwestern part of Madagascar to give some perspectives on this Malagasy grassy biomass workshop. Stalagmites are, in general, secondary cave deposits. They are the results of dissolution of a limestone bedrock from an acidic rainfall, and when it enters the cave, it degas and can precipitate calcium carbonates, either as a stalactite or a stalagmite. Stalagmite is one of our key interests because every time it forms, it can record the environmental conditions at that time. And there are several proxies that we are studying from stalagmites, such as the oxygen isotopes as a proxy for rainfall or evaporation or something else, and the carbon isotopes, which is the purpose that I will be talking more in this presentation. So delta 13C in stalagmites can mainly reflect the dissolved inorganic carbon from the drip water, which in turn can reflect several reservoirs, such as the CO2 in the atmosphere, the soil vegetation, specifically the extent of C3 or C4 plants, also the limestone bedrock, and lastly, the microfactors that happens inside the cave, such as ventilations or the rate of degassing or the prior calcite precipitation that happens prior to reaching the cave. So here, I am showing you stalagmites that have been studied for the purpose of this presentation. On the right is the stable isotope records. You see the red is the delta 13C and the blue is the delta 18O. If we look very closely first at the delta 18O, it is relatively stable. But if we look at the delta 13C, we see that this time interval has a relatively more negative value, and the delta 13C and delta 18O are kind of closely related. However, the delta 13C in here decoupled from the delta 18O, and the value is also increasing. So if we look at the C3 and C4 plants, C3 plants have a more negative value, and it is expected that the calcium carbonates that is precipitated from it have also a more negative value. However, C4 plants have a higher value, and the delta 13C from the carbonates that's precipitated from largely C4 dominated vegetation have a higher value compared to compared to the C3 plants. So if we just use that as our simple assumption to interpret these records, we could say that this period before approximately 890 Common Era is dominated by C3 vegetation, and it's mainly be induced by climate. But then this interval after, when we have approximately 12% permeable shift, could be dominated by C4 vegetation. But the causes from the C3 to C4 shift has been a question. And looking at several other records, such as lake sediment records, bone records, or some other archaeological evidences from Voary here and the Mahilaka up here, and other spores from other lakes in the northern part of Madagascar, we attempted to interpret that the changes from the C3 dominated vegetation to C4 dominated vegetation could have been influenced by human activities. However, the C3 and C4 vegetation is challenged, especially if we look at this 12 permeable shift, because recent research that I've performed in the same cave, looking at the spatial distribution of delta 13C in modern carbonates, also showed this 10% difference between one location to another. And as I mentioned earlier, there could have been other factors other than vegetation. There are also some other microfactors in cave that could drive to the changes in delta 13C. So that is a big question in saying this is mainly C3 dominated vegetation or C4 dominated vegetations, because there are other factors that we have not looked into much details. However, just to conclude, there has been obviously some changes that are recorded in the stalagmite records, but as I said, with some of the evidences, we are challenged whether if we could say solely that it is 100% tied with anthropogenic activities, or the DC records from the stalagmites could be also influenced by other microclimates inside the cave. That's still a question. But I will end here, and I would like to thank you for listening, and thanks to my collaborators and the supporter of this research. Thank you.